Okay, let's get on with part 2 of our critique and see what we've got to look at here. It looks like we're going to have 3 parts for this, so there'll be one following this. Let's see. Here comes our first shot. Well, this is a nice, calm, quiet little shoreline shot. Right away, there is one really glaring problem, and that is the horizon. It looks like you're on the edge of the world and this side is heavier, and the effect is worsened by the fact that there's a lot of visual weight over on this side. So we need to straighten this out. In the latest versions of Photoshop, this is really simple. If you go into where the eyedropper tool is and pick up a tool called a ruler tool, click on that. And now you've got this new interesting looking cursor. Bring it down and click and hold and draw a line on whatever it is you want to be level and let go. Now, up on the taskbar is a button that says straighten layer. On older versions, this is laid out a little differently. You could have done this in Adobe Camera Raw. There is also a way to straighten at that stage. But since this is now here, we'll use this version. We click on straighten, and it straightens it. Now, the problem with that is we've now lost some space. So the first thing we need to see is, can we live without that? So let's try a crop, see if we can come in. These checkerboard areas are transparent. So if we bring our crop inside those areas, have we ruined our composition? No, I don't think so. I think actually that would work for us. However, just to add something to show you, I'm going to make the assertion here that we need this space down here on the shoreline. So I'm going to draw this out a little. And that means I've lost this sky. I'm going to go ahead and live with that. Hit enter. Take this crop. And now what do I do with this sky? Well, I'm just going to clone it in. So I'll go over here and pick up the stamp tool, this clone stamp. I don't need it that big, so using the bracket keys, I'll make my cursor a little smaller. I'll hold down the Alt key. The cursor changes to that crosshairs. I'll click there. Let go. And now I'll come over, and you'll notice, see the little cross beside the circle? That cross is where it's picking up. At the moment, it is set to follow the main cursor. So you can see it's picking up sky and everything. Let go. And that's allowed me to bring that sky over. When it's a simple pattern, it's really simple to do. So now we have our image cropped. It's looking a little better. There's one thing we might do. This is purely optional. When you're shooting reflections in water, this is almost always true, especially if it's a lake, because the bottom of the lake is dark, in the mud or whatever it is. That reflection is going to be darker than the sky. So I might want to see if I can darken the sky a little bit to make it better match this reflection, and maybe to bring out a little of this material here. So I'm going to make a layer mask. Remember, I'll make a duplicate layer. I'll pull this down to there. I've now got a duplicate. I'm going to click on the layer mask icon, tell it to multiply, and that would give me the dark area on top, and I would need to erase through to the light area. But I want to show you another way to do this. In this image, it really wouldn't matter which of these we used. But sometimes the area that you want to alter is a small area. You don't have very much brushing or masking you need to do. If you did it this way, it means you would have to do the rest of it, most of the area, to correct. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key while I click on multiply. Now remember, when we did this the last time, what happened was we got this white icon and it was surrounded by the little frame. Well, I'm going to delete that simply by going back a step. This time, when I click on the icon, hold down the Alt key when you click on it, and now what you get is a black icon, not a white one. When I click on my multiply, this doesn't change. What happened? Well, this is a different type of layer mask. Here, let's go over to the palette. I'm going to need to use a white brush. And because I want to blend this quite a bit, I'm going to make my brush pretty good sized. And now I'm only at 60%, so I can bring this 60% at a time. And now I can darken that top area. And you'll see now my mask is doing exactly the opposite as it did before. And if I want to bring this part back, this brush is so big with such a soft edge, I've actually darkened this a little bit. I can switch foreground and background, and I can do it either with this little arrow over here, the little double-ended arrow, or I can simply hit the X key. And that changes things back. So I'm going to hit the X key and lighten this bottom half back up so it's a closer match. So now I've got the top and the bottom to be a much closer, not a perfect, but a much closer match to each other. And it looks pretty realistic. What I also want to do, because I did not want to darken this, is come in and lighten this back up so you can see it. There's information here I don't want to lose. And that would pretty much do our work on this particular shot. Since I have such a blue sky against the clouds, I want to show you one other technique just to show you. I'm not sure I would use it in this one, but I don't think I have another one with this class to show. So we'll try it here. I'm going to flatten these layers. Flatten image. And I'm going to create a new duplicate layer. And this time, I'm going to give it the layer style of luminosity. Notice nothing changed, and that's because these two layers are identical at the moment. What luminosity does is it imposes the tones of the top layer onto the bottom layer and allows you to adjust areas, even though they're of color, but based on the tone of them. So what I'm going to do is come up here to Image Adjustments, and come down to Black and White. I'm going to turn this top layer into a black and white layer. But it's still color. That's because it's the bottom layer with the tones of the top layer imposed on it. So I'm going to take this tone, this blue, and I'm going to darken it a little. Watch the image. If I want to bring, I'm assuming that sand has a lot of yellow in it. Yeah, a little bit of red. I can bring those back out. We'll say okay. So now, we'll flatten this. Now we've got a considerably more dramatic image that we can work with. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Oh, this is a very nice portrait. Very nice portrait of this from behind of the lady sitting here watching the sunset. Remember what I said in part 1? Always look at your picture in the viewfinder and try to decide, where is the picture? Where is this actually belonging? Well, I think the picture is her looking at the sunset. So I would expand that a little bit to say the picture is in this area. Okay, so now I want to look at other areas of the picture. What in those other areas, like over here, what of that is contributing to this picture? What's telling me more than this? Well, I already know I'm looking through the fence at a community here somewhere. And her direction is really, we're forced this way. She's looking this way a little bit. The sun is this way a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this. No surprise. And although this is a very nice sky, I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Now I can decide, do I need all of that? No, I don't need it, but it's okay. And now I've got less taking away from her. What I might do is see if I've got some detail I can bring out in her hair. Before I go to the effort to do it, I need to know, is there any detail there to bring out? So I'm going to very quickly come into Image, Adjustments, Levels, and I'm going to grab this dark slider, mid-grade slider I guess would be better, and see, oh look at that, there is all kinds of information in her hair. Well, I want some of that. So I'll put this back. Now, if this were black and white, I probably wouldn't do anything except come in and pick up the dodge tool. The problem with that dodge tool is it risks messing with color. But we might as well use it once and see if it works a little. Let me get a where I want mid-tones, so let me bring the exposure up a little. Oh, you can already start to see what's happening. Her hair, because of this, is turning red. That's an unfortunate function of using the dodge tool, burn and dodge tool, is it sometimes just completely messes with color. So I'm going to go back before that. And now I'm going to use our old layer mask routine. Except this time I want a screen layer. Remember, we used multiply before, and multiply basically darkened things by about a stop. The screen layer will basically lighten things by about a stop. And because the only area I want to work with is her hair, maybe her skirt, I'm not sure yet, I'm going to make this a reversed mask. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Now I've got my black mask. I'll come over here and make this a white brush. I'm going to turn my opacity down a little bit. Now I can lighten her hair. Not only can I get more detail out of it, but I can avoid the reddish glare. Give me much more detail. And there we are. Okay, let's see what we have with our next one. Oh, that's cool. A skateboarder. The only issue when you're shooting something like this, think about this. She is, you know, because you are there at the scene, you know what she's doing. Has she just come up and pivoted and is about to go back down the into the arena? Or was she trying to stand there and her skateboard's falling off the edge and she's about to crash and burn? From the image, either of those is possible. So be careful when you totally freeze motion and what you're left with is something that's a little inexplicable. But let's start. We'll take this as it is. We'll start again with the idea of where is our picture? Well, it's right here. How much of the rest of this do we really need to tell our story? We need to realize what this is, that it's in front of a crowd, so it's probably a contest of some kind. But that's really all we need to know. So let's go in. Now, I don't know, because I'm not into this sport, these symbols may be incredibly important to your story. I don't know whether they are or not, but because I don't know, I'm going to leave them. And leave that crop roughly the same proportion you had it. I'll hit enter, and I'm going to use Control Plus and bring that back up so we can see what we've got. All right. So we're just a little bit flat. Once again, we're going to use layers to solve that. So I'll come down here, make a duplicate layer. And this time we'll try something new. You'll notice in these layers, this is divided into sections. Each of them generally do something. This top one all has ways to darken different parts of it. The second one all has ways to lighten different parts of it. Here, the top two that we'll be concerned about are overlay and soft light. Both of them build contrast. Anything that is neutral gray, it will, or middle gray rather, it will not mess with. But if it's lighter than middle gray, it'll lighten it. If it's darker than middle gray, it will darken it. And in our case, I don't want anything very, very dramatic. Overlay is the most. Let's go ahead and take that. You can see that's pretty dramatic. Let me come and take soft light is less. And now by adjusting the opacity, I can bring that down just a little bit more. The reason that I really like doing some of these global changes using layer masks is that, or using layers, is the amount of flexibility you have now to adjust the opacity to determine how much of an effect have you done. Okay, so I'm going to flatten that. And I want to vignette this a little. I want to make her stand out. Typically speaking, our eye is going to be drawn to the lightest area, or the area that is the most different from the general image. If the general image is very light and there's something dark in it, a dark spot, we'll look to that spot. If the image is neutral or like this one, more or less neutral and has a lot of dark tones, this light area is a little bit distracting. But it's also white. There's not much I can do with white. So what I'm going to do is pick up this blue and lay it in here. but I don't want to have to go through and mask all of these characters. Fortunately, I don't have to. And I don't have to add much tone because I can darken it later using that luminosity trick we tried before. So I'm going to come in with the eyedropper, which is my pickup tool, and I'm going to pick up one of these middle blue, lighter blue areas. And you can see over on the color swatch where that blue really is. So now I'm going to come up here, use the brush, and I'm going to tell the brush to darken. And what that means is it will only paint the color, this light blue, in an area that is the same tone or lighter. It will not paint on anything darker. So it becomes its own mask. So let me enlarge my brush a bit here. I still want it soft. Her hand is darker. The crowd is darker. So I can lay some of that blue in there. And now, once I've done that, now I can go in and darken that sky. I'll make my duplicate layer. I'll make this a luminosity mask. We'll do the image adjustments, black and white. And I'll darken this cyan a little. Now, I don't especially want to darken this lower part, but that's okay. I don't have to. Ooh, that did darken that ring a little bit. That's nice. But what this would let me do is now use a normal layer mask in any of the areas I did not want to darken that much. If I use a black brush, a nice low opacity, make sure the brush is set to normal. Now I can come in and very slightly lighten some of this. You can see here where it's affecting that tone. And now maybe we'll just add a little sport to this. Maybe we'll vignette this. So I'm going to flatten this again. Tell it to multiply. We'll make it a layer mask. And now we've got a shot that almost looks like it was lit for the shot. Much more dramatic. It's a much stronger shot. Let's see. We'll click on the snapshot tool. Go back. There was our start. There's where we ended. Okay, so this is a pretty powerful little tool we're playing with here. So let's grab our last one for this module. That would be this one. Oh, that's fascinating. Very graphic, very interesting, almost ominous view of the city at night. Fascinating color palette with the blues and yellows. A lot of really dramatic movies. The art director will use that kind of palette, blue and yellow, where the yellow, the overall effect is blue and the yellow brings stuff out. Before I play with this, I want to know, is this truly black or is there anything in here? I kind of like it black, but if there is something there, I may inadvertently affect it. So I just want to know. So I'm going to go to my adjustments levels and just see is there detail there. Yeah, there's some, but it's pretty weird. Okay. So we'll cancel, go back to this. Okay, I want to do two things. I would like just a hair more blue on top. Just a little. And this is so bright, my eye goes bam right to this. I want to tone it down like these windows are. So first thing I'm going to do is deal with that top with the blue. And I need some space to operate. So I'll go into Image, Canvas Size. This is different than the image size that you've been using to resize your images. And I want the height. I'm going to set this relative. What relative means is just adding to what's already there. If it didn't say relative, I'd have to know exactly what this size is and set that in it. I just want it to deal with the top. So all of the action's going to be going up from the bottom. And I want the height. I can always crop this back. So I'm going to set this to 1 inch. I'll let it go black. And now I've got this additional area on it. Now, how am I going to get that blue up? Well, I could try to clone it, but that could be a little kludgy. But Photoshop has an amazing set of functions that operate under the general label of content aware. And I'm going to show you one of them. The first thing I'm going to do is select this little sliver of blue. And it picks up this building as well. And then I'm going to edit Content Aware Scale. Now watch what happens when I do this. I can bring that building up, or that sky up. Now I'm going to say select, deselect, and I want to trim just a little of that off. So with that, you can bring areas up. You've also shown you really need to clean your sensor. And later in the class, I'm going to give you material on doing sensor cleaning. But for right now, I'll use the healing brush. We'll come over that sensor thing and it's gone. That's an easy way to deal with it. Now I want to deal with this. I'm assuming that's parking garage of some kind. First thing I'm going to do is use the eyedropper tool and pick up a color I would like to put in there. You could pick up anything you wanted. I'm picking this one up because it's a natural color in the scene. And now we're going to do what we did before with that sky. Again, we want to darken that white. I don't have to worry about this black. Gee, nothing is going to be darker than that. Let me set my opacity to maybe 40, 50%. And now I can bring that down. Now I could have picked any of those colors at any intensity I wanted, and this is not going to paint over the black because I've told it to darken. This is really a powerful tool. It basically lets tones do the masking for you, which is very cool. Okay, so that's part 2. We have one more part to go to finish up the shots you turned in, and we'll be back to those in a minute. See you then.